Well, good morning. Good morning. My name is Bill Goodrich, and I am a trustee at Keuka College, very proud trustee. And I am privileged today to introduce to you Ann Kress, president of Monroe Community College, the 5th president of Monroe Community College, which is a nationally recognized with enrollment of over 37,000 students. I've been in the Rochester community myself for many, many years, and I can attest that Ann Kress's leadership skills are recognized and admired in the community. You know, we were talking a little bit earlier, and Ann is everywhere. She is out there, and so great that you're here today. Ann's academic credentials are extensive and impressive, as you can read in the bio. She serves as a board member of the League of Innovation. It's an international organization, which I think is very fitting for this topic and discussion today. Committed to improving community colleges through innovation, experimentation, and institutional transformation. Additionally, Ann has newly joined the prestigious Council on Foreign Relations, a higher education working group on global issues, which again, I know Ann's going to touch on some of those points. And another important key element and attribute that Ann brings is she started as an English faculty member. So she has the perspective of being in the classroom with the students. And the experience with international students in an academic setting also plays a key role for today, for her to be here with us. Now, on the personal note, she is a quilter, an accomplished quilter. And in her house, there's a place where she can get away and create some wonderful creations. And that tells us a couple things. Ann has a tremendous attention to detail and patience. Okay? And one of the things she told me is that with quilts is you're able to finish something. In our careers, and especially in Ann's, where she's running all the time, she's able to finish that task. So I found that quite interesting and fitting. So please join me in welcoming Ann Kress to the podium.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Put my water over here. I want to talk to you today really about community colleges, not just Monroe Community College, although I could talk about that all afternoon and everyone would love it because I'm what's standing between you and lunch. But I want to talk about community colleges in general and their role in internationalization. America has almost 1,200 community colleges, and they enroll almost half of all undergraduates in the United States, which makes them a significant force in American higher education. As their name suggests, these institutions have developed very close relationships with their local communities, hence community colleges. They've developed partnerships with regional universities, for example, such as Keuka, Monroe Community College has relationships with, but also with industries. Yet in order to be effective locally, many community colleges, including my own, have realized that they need to reach out globally. A recent study by the American Council on Education, though, found that many community colleges have not fully realized their role as global players in higher education. They have not always built the partnerships for global education or have prepared students for responsible and active participation in the global economy. And that finding is striking in light of evidence that the community college model is one of the U.S. higher education system's most successful exports, with some form of two-year college system in place in over 30 countries. Whether in the United States or abroad, the two-year sector is called upon to live out the exact same mission, to provide access to the opportunities that higher education offers, both for personal improvement, but also for regional economic development. As a global enterprise, community colleges are in the business of transformative connections and engagement. So it is clear that it is time for America's community colleges to engage in stronger international collaborations and partnerships, which is why I'm delighted to be here today. And I'd like to discuss the role of internationalization on U.S. community college campuses, but then also the international role of community colleges. Since many of you may not be as familiar with the U.S. version of community colleges, Let me begin with a brief history of this sector of U.S. higher education, which has been around since about the turn of the 20th century, so the 1900s. In their initial incarnation, many community colleges were called junior colleges, and that name suggests their role within higher education, which was to provide the first 2 years of a 4-year degree. Other community colleges were called technical colleges, and again, that shows part of the roots of community colleges, which is to provide career-oriented or vocational career training. These two names largely fell away in the 1940s when then President Truman established a commission that would come out with what became the national definition of a community college. The Commission on the Future of Higher Education found that the United States needed a network of public community colleges that would charge little or no tuition, serve as cultural centers, be comprehensive in their program offerings with an emphasis on civic responsibilities, and would serve the specific needs of the areas in which they were located. And basically from that point forward, our sector was known as the community college sector. So it's important in the context of our talk today to note that the Truman Commission's report, which was called Higher Education for America's Democracy, has its roots in a notion about education that is a commonplace in the United States and a notion that seems to be gaining currency around the world. It is that everyone is entitled to a higher education. This belief reverberates with the notion that access to higher education, offers a pathway to a better future and a more prosperous future, not just for the individuals who partake in it, but for the communities in which they live. As Cohen and Brower describe it in their History of the American Community College, it is the belief that all individuals should have the opportunity to live out their greatest potential. And because they offer the door of access to higher education, community colleges provide this opportunity. So what does it mean to offer an open door of access? Well, typically in the United States, the only requirement for entry into a community college is a high school diploma or an equivalent. The community college system is designed to take students as they come in some cases with very limited academic preparation, in other cases with much academic preparation. They provide the assistance necessary to help these students achieve their academic goals. Most students who begin in a community college plan to transfer to a university upon graduation. For example, Monroe Community College students have opportunities to transfer to all of the 19 colleges and universities in our region, as well as many as 450 colleges and universities across the country. The remainder of students at a community college would follow a career path. It would prepare them for employment immediately upon graduation. And just to give you a sense of how successful that opportunity is, within Monroe Community College, over 90% of our students who graduate with a career-related degree go on to find employment in their field within our region. And that is because community colleges work very, very closely with industry. Our programs relate directly to the careers that students are looking for, whether they're in healthcare, life sciences, manufacturing, information technology, construction, automotive technology, public safety, culinary arts, childcare, and more. And in fact, new programs are begun at community colleges across this country every single day as career tracks change. For that very reason, among others, community colleges comprise one of the fastest growing sectors in U.S. higher education. Enrollments have increased 15% in U.S. community colleges in just the past 2 years. This growth has occurred for many reasons, including flexibility of scheduling options and curriculum that is very responsive to workforce development needs. But one cause for the dramatic growth in community colleges over the past decade predominates. Community colleges offer high-quality academic experience at a cost that falls far below that of four-year colleges or universities. For example, a student who starts at Monroe Community College and then transfers to one of the regional colleges or universities can save between 40 and 90% in the first 2 years of higher education, all the while attending a college that provides small classes with faculty who are focused on teaching rather than research, a college with award-winning student leadership programming and title-winning academic teams, a college with a curriculum that stretches from honors classes in liberal arts and sciences to career programs in areas as diverse as clinical laboratory technology and hospitality management. So from their origins, the two-year college sector in the United States has defined itself by how well it serves the higher education needs of its communities. And the booming enrollments you see at community colleges across the United States seem to suggest that we're doing a pretty good job of it. So it might seem surprising, given the local and regional focus of community colleges, that they have turned their focus now to global issues. But now that you know the history of community colleges, the reason for this shift is fairly simple. Community colleges have a clear mission to prepare students for the next step in their life. As you've heard, in some cases, the next step is to transfer on to a university. In other cases, the next step is an entry-level career. But in all cases, students who graduate from a community college are now stepping directly into a global economy and an international marketplace. As Keisha and Daniel have noted, employers are seeking an understanding of the global context among all employees, entry level to the highest level of executive suite employees. They write that colleges across all sectors must begin, quote, integrating international and cross-cultural topics into all curricula, since these skills seem to be universally needed by students, even at the entry level. So community college leaders and faculty need to assure that their students are prepared to compete upon graduation. They need to be able to work with individuals from other cultures and other countries. They need to understand the diverse frames of thinking. They need to navigate through a global economy. And let me share just 3 quick snapshots of how that's the case. Before I came to Monroe Community College, I was at another community college in the state of Florida, which was right next to the University of Florida. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's in Gainesville. And one of our board members ran a trucking firm. Jimmy Davis ran Davis Trucking. It was a family business. And when I was at Santa Fe, we began a lot of global initiatives that were funded by U.S. Department of Education grants, and one of them was to provide business leaders in the community with second language training so that they could better communicate. And there was some question whether or not our board would support those activities, because basically we were a community college. And Jimmy Davis, who never spoke at any of our board meetings, spoke up once and said in his southern drawl, "I don't know about the rest of y'all, but all I do all day is talk to people from Venezuela, and I need to learn Spanish." Here he was in the middle of north central Florida, which is basically in the middle of nowhere. It's nowhere near Disney, by the way. That's what everyone knows about Florida. And he needed to compete in a global environment. The folks he bought many of his parts from were in Venezuela. Fast forward to Rochester. Just yesterday, there was an announcement from Xerox that in a partnership with a company in India, Xerox was offering as many as 250 of their engineers the opportunity to move their positions to work in India. That would not have happened 20 years ago. It would not have even happened 10 years ago. The world is changing. And I came here this morning from a breakfast at Kodak when we were talking about diversity and inclusion with the senior VP there. And one of the presentation points he made was that 50% of Kodak's employees now live outside of the United States and 50% of them live inside the United States. All of our students, whether they're from MCC or from KUCA, are going into a world that's a very, very different place than the world I entered into as a business major years ago. So the American Association of Community Colleges, the leading policy group representing our sector, community colleges, and the Association of Community College Trustees have responded to the growing calls for internationalization at the two-year college level with a joint statement that they issued in 2006. As they note, quote, "We live in a time of continuous economic and social change driven by increasing globalization. They observe that community colleges have an obligation not only to embrace global education, but to engage their communities in understanding its importance." And I think I want to underscore that. The relationship that community colleges have is frequently as the lifeblood of their communities, whether they're rural or urban, as MCC is. And we take upon ourselves that role to help our communities understand the increasing importance of the global context. Importantly, AACC and ACCT go one step further, though. calling on community colleges to, quote, welcome and embrace international students into their campuses and their local communities, strengthen international programs and support services, and promote faculty and student exchanges. Community colleges are asked to reach out to higher education institutions abroad, such as those many of you represent, for greater collaboration and formal partnerships. In many ways, this joint statement on the role of community colleges in international education fundamentally redefines for community colleges what community means. No longer is it simply a regional designation. It is now a global descriptor. So why would these groups make such a statement on internationalization? Well, in part, it's because the world is already on community college campuses. The number of international students at community colleges has increased dramatically between the 1990s and the 2000s by almost 60%. And this increase has continued apace. Foreign student enrollments at community colleges increased 10.5% just from 2008 to 2009. In fact, over 91,000 international students attend U.S. community colleges, and that comprises 33% of all international enrollments in the United States. So let me restate that. A third of all the international students in the United States right now attend community colleges. Asian students account for some 52% of all international enrollment at two-year colleges. In some community colleges along the western coast of the U.S., from California to Seattle, in Washington State, international students, especially Asian Pacific Islanders, account for at least 10% of all students enrolled. So out of all the students, for example, at Seattle Central Community College in Seattle, more than 10%, 12% of them are international students. The reason for the marked increase in international enrollment at U.S. community colleges is not all that different from the reason for increase in U.S. students' enrollments. As Peggy Blumenthal, Executive Vice President of the Institute of International Education says, foreign students are shopping smart, and they're realizing you don't need to pay for 4 years of an expensive private education. I should sidebar and say CUCA is not expensive private education. Joke. You can always start at a community college and transfer in. For example, you could start at MCC and transfer to CUCA. International students have been welcomed to community colleges because they add value to the academic experience of a community college. They contribute to the teaching and learning environment. They learn from and with U.S. students, and they create a more vibrant community on our campuses. And in turn, U.S. community colleges provide enormous value to international students. The average cost of tuition and fees at a U.S. community college for an international student is $6,500. As community colleges serve more international students, they also need to transform their curriculum and engage in new partnerships to expand their own global reach and understanding. A growing number of institutions offer some version of a global studies degree or certificate, which integrates a deeper understanding of international issues within the context of a specific academic discipline. In some cases, these degrees include a study abroad experience. For example, at Monroe Community College, students in our culinary arts and hospitality management program study in the Bahamas, where they learn a very different context of preparing and serving food, a very different culture from what they would find within the Finger Lakes region. At Parkland College in Illinois, students take accelerated courses with students in Costa Rica studying agriculture. Or they study with students in Ecuador and they study nursing. At Santa Fe College in Florida, which is where I came from, visiting Fulbright scholars from Indonesia and China have partnered with native faculty to create new courses about understanding the Muslim world or to internationalize sociology and literature classes. Other community colleges are partnering with institutions abroad to provide wholesale curriculum exports. Daytona State College in Florida has a long-standing partnerships with institutions in the Bahamas to offer curriculum, especially in technical fields such as aviation and automotive. Monroe Community College recently began a collaboration with several other SUNY, State University of New York community colleges, to provide a curriculum in entrepreneurial studies to a technical college in Lebanon, as part of a new program offered by the Higher Education for Development Institute in cooperation with the U.S. Department of State, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and the U.S. Department of Education. This initiative consists of establishing new partnerships between U.S. community colleges and community and technical colleges in what is referred to as the BAMENA, or Broader Middle East, North Africa region. The goal of this partnership goes well beyond transporting curriculum. The goal is to build skill sets within the region among folks who live there so that they can perhaps achieve greater economic stability within their countries, in the hopes that this might promote social, cultural, and political stability within these same home countries. The new HED initiative falls in line with the most recent development in the internationalization of community colleges, which is quite simply the export of the community college model itself. And if you think back to the origins of the community college within the United States, that it was created as the college of access and opportunity, that it is a higher education hybrid between 2 parts academic preparation and 1 part workforce development, you might see why it holds such appeal for other countries. Tully Cornick, executive director of HED, recently noted, traditional systems of higher education in many parts of the world have been fairly elitist and were designed to winnow out rather than to increase access. But he added, there is recognition around the world that community colleges have something significant to offer. For example, in the past few years, China has been working with the American Association of Community Colleges to identify ways to integrate the U.S. community college structure into its own higher education system. The flexibility and the dynamic nature of America's community colleges' role in workforce development has particular appeal and is seen as a potential solution to the current disconnect between Chinese vocational training and the true needs of the growing, rapidly expanding marketplace. Other community colleges in the U.S. have found eager partners among India's private community colleges, both proprietary institutions and also nonprofits. And interest in the model is not limited to any one continent. Daytona State College, again from Florida, has recently partnered with the Inter-American Development Bank to create a community college system in the Dominican Republic. A consortium of community colleges with the Community Colleges and International Development Group helped to build Goree Community College in the country of Georgia. And LaGuardia Community College in New York City is assisting in the creation of the Community College de Santiago in Chile. This institution in Chile brings something very new, but something that's old to community colleges, the integration of career preparation with transfer education. Perhaps the biggest player in this whole discussion has been Houston Community College in Texas. They have been aggressive and innovative in partnering with countries around the globe to help build and expand community college systems. They have been in countries from Vietnam to Qatar, and it is this last collaboration with Qatar that has drawn a lot of significant press. Qatar held a competition and opened it to large community college districts in the United States to help them build the first ever community college system within their country. 8 community college districts competed for a contract that at the end of the day was worth $45 million. Qatar government's Supreme Education Council selected Houston Community College to create a customized community college for that country. And when the announcement of that award was made, the American Association of Community Colleges' former president, George Boggs, described it as, quote, a commentary on the dramatic importance of community colleges in our country and across the globe. While the new Qatar Community College will certainly reflect the culture and the needs of its region, certain aspects of the institution will be very familiar to those of us who work in community colleges. The college will serve traditional age students, students who graduate from high school, and who seek to transfer to 4-year colleges within Qatar, including many American universities, but lack the academic preparation to do so directly. Then, as the years go on, it plans to add some career training programs in vocational areas that are distinct to Qatar, And you might guess what those might be: oil and gas technology and finance and banking. Just to give you an example of how curriculum can port, and think about where Houston is within Texas in a very oil-rich area. Houston Community College is now taking some of the curriculum they're developing for Qatar and also offering it to Brazil to work in oil refineries. So you can see that much of this curriculum essentially has value outside of the United States. And even as U.S. community colleges begin ever more partnerships to export the community college model, two-year colleges in some form or under some name have already come to play a significant role across the globe. In Israel, 58% of all students in higher education are in a community college. In Japan, it's 26%, and Korea and France, it's 20%. It's quite possible that as community colleges gain a greater foothold in countries around the globe, U.S. institutions will look abroad to see examples of how we can now innovate, update, and redesign the higher education system that we once created. In other words, the U.S. system will improve because competition abroad forces it to re-examine how we do our business, which is something that started this whole discussion. And it brings us right back to the beginning. As I noted earlier, as a global enterprise, community colleges are in the business of transformative connections and engagement. And my goal today was to provide you with a portrait of America's community colleges and to let you know that we are open to and truly in search of stronger partnerships with international higher education organizations and educational policy groups. We want to understand how to prepare our students to go out into the world and be competitive, and we want to assist your students in understanding how we work. We have much to offer and to learn from your colleges and universities, and most importantly, from and with your students. Our door of access is open, and I welcome you to find out the many opportunities that await you in America's community colleges. Thank you so much for your time.
We do have time for some questions.
Are there any questions? Yes,
we
sir.
have a microphone. Gary's going to be running with the microphone, I believe.
Madam Speaker, my name is Chumpan from Bangkok, Thailand. I visit some of your community college. About this 1,200 community college around America, most of them are 2 years.
Yes.
2 years ago, I visited Florida. They say majority of them now is 4 years.
Yes.
What happened, and what will be the trend? Thank you.
Well, I'm probably a good person to ask that question too, because I actually was responsible for taking my previous institution from offering 2-year degrees to 4-year degrees, Santa Fe Community College, now Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida. I can tell you what happened very simply within the state of Florida, because I was also on the task force that defined what the new Bachelor's of Applied Sciences degree would be. Florida as a state ran out of capacity. And I think that's something you see across the globe, that there were more people who wanted to enter the higher education system than there were slots for students to enter in the state university system of Florida. And what the state saw was that it was losing ground in terms of economic competitiveness because students were being shut out specifically of programs that would lead directly to careers in healthcare and education, in information technology and public safety. And then it turned to the community colleges and said, could you offer access? If we allowed you limited ability to offer 4-year degrees, would you be able to offer these degrees and allow students to enter? And the system said yes. So for example, the college that I came from added 2 degrees initially. It added 1 in clinical laboratory sciences. Some of you may know it as medical technology as well. And the reason was that Florida was looking at the Mayo Clinic. If you're familiar, it's based in Minnesota, but has a headquarters as well in Jacksonville, Florida, that was going to move all of its clinical laboratory diagnostic testing to the state of Florida, but couldn't hire anyone because there was a 94% gap between the number of available employees and the number of jobs. So they said, would you offer that program? We said yes, and we started that program, and it was directly related to an industry need. We also added a program in Health Services Administration. Since that point, that Santa Fe College has added programs in early childhood education and in nursing. And when you look around the state, you'll see there's a real consistent thread to the degrees that are offered. That was a pattern that really started in Florida. You see the same pattern across many states where simply there are too many students and not enough slots in higher education, with an understanding that in the United States going forward, about 2/3 of all jobs will require a college degree. So you really need to have that credential. Texas has floated some community colleges over to 4-year degrees. Washington State has as well. Michigan's about to jump into that. And Illinois has had some discussions along those same lines. So it's really been an issue of capacity, that there simply aren't enough slots.
How about quality?
Well, it's all accredited. So higher education in the United States is accredited by regional accrediting bodies. So for example, in the state of Florida, for community colleges to move to 4-year institutions, it actually was having gone to the University of Florida, which is Florida's flagship university, I can say this, it's a more onerous process than it takes for the University of Florida to add a degree. Santa Fe or any community college would have to first propose the degree at the state level and get state approval. Then it would need to go on and get accreditation from the regional accreditor. In that case, it's the Southern Association of Community Colleges. And then, with most of the degrees being in career fields, then they need a third level of accreditation, which is usually from the industry accrediting body. So, for example, in clinical laboratory science, it's NACLS. It's the National Association of Clinical Laboratory Science that needs to come in and accredit your program. So all of these programs receive the same accreditation and are subject to the same requirements as they would be if they were offered at a 4-year institution. Other questions?
There's a question back there.
Thank you. My name is Irawan from Indonesia. Listen from your explanation about the community college in US. It seems that there are 3 characteristics of community college. First, to give more access to the education and then to the job markets for the people. The second is more tailored made curriculum compared to more strict in the university that we use now. And the third is more cooperative instead of competitive because of competition, because of the specific business for each community college in different country. Also in the same country but different region.
Yeah.
So how about your opinion about that? And then the second, can you give us a more detailed explanation about the experience of community college in developing country that give an impact to the economic development in that country?
Sure. The first question, I think you outlined it fairly well. What are the defining characteristics? The only thing I would add is that in the United States, typically across all community colleges, about 2/3 of the students, so about 66% of the students actually begin in a community college with a desire to transfer on to finish a 4-year degree. So for example, a student starts at Monroe Community College and moves on to the Rochester Institute of Technology, moves on to CUCA, moves on to SUNY Brockport. So the vast majority of students are really looking to start there and then to move on to a 4-year degree. In an example of a community college in a developing country, let me give you, rather than a concrete example, since one of my friends is Linda Hagedorn, who works at Iowa State University, who has done a lot of consulting in Indonesia and in Vietnam. One of the concerns that the countries bring forward is that the current existing vocational system doesn't give students the necessary qualifications to really advance. And so one of the things that they're looking for in import of a community college model in terms of economic development is graduating students who are immediately hireable by companies rather than companies then having to essentially provide a secondary level of training. So it makes a more efficient system. Let me go to the example of the institution we're partnering with in Lebanon, in Al-Kafat. It's Al-Kafat Technical College in Lebanon. Al-Kafat is a school that was started by a foundation in Lebanon. Lebanon doesn't have what in the United States we think of as the social services fabric. And so it's a foundation that initially looked to serve essentially disabled students, blind students, physically disabled students, and to give them some means to support themselves when they're living in Lebanon. But what they found was that they could give the students the skill sets so they would learn how to make something, but they didn't have any idea then how to turn that into a business. And that may sound familiar to many of you who are involved in entrepreneurial activities. Just because you know how to make a bottle doesn't mean you know how to sell it or develop a business model. So they looked to the United States to come in and help those students understand, okay, now you've been working in Al-Kafat for a while. How do you take that and move it out and start your own small business? Because Lebanon is, like many developing countries, small business oriented, not just developing countries. In the United States, in this region, 97% of all businesses employ fewer than 100 people. So they're small businesses. So that's the example of regional economic development then. How do you get people to go from working within essentially a nonprofit charity environment and then start their own businesses with the skill sets that they've learned so that they can be self-sustaining and they aren't out on the street and they begin to contribute to the economy.
I'm from Thai Muhammad, President of Siam University in Thailand. I'm very much admiring the community college system in this country, especially in terms of access and success. And I think that in our ASEAN country, the community college system has not well developed. So the question that I'd like to ask you is that right now we try to promote cooperative program, work integrated program in our university. And we also like to promote it into the level of international cooperative education. I'd like to ask you whether community college also be a venue that we can work with in order to promote our cooperative education. I mean, if some of our students like to have the experiential learning, whether it will be possible, because I believe that community college is closer to the industry. That is my first question. So the second one is that you have talking about the industry accreditation. I'm also very much interested in the industry accreditation. Could you elaborate more about the process and the way to get that accreditation, and whether it's also linked to the payment of the graduate as well? Thank you very much.
Sure. The first question was about gaining experiential learning, I think, through those sorts of cooperative agreements, and definitely there is that opportunity. Just to give you an example from my past, and we can, I'm happy to talk with you offline as well. The college that I came from, for example, because we were in Florida, the majority of our international students came from South America or from Haiti. And we would get groups of South American students who were studying essentially aqua agriculture. So they were studying water-based agriculture. They would do some time at the University of Florida, they would do some time at Santa Fe, and they would build up some credits that then we could give them a certificate on. But it essentially gave them hands-on learning experiences in an environment that otherwise they would not be able to. As regards to industry accreditation, in the United States, we have what's called regional accreditation, which essentially says that your institution, for example, Monroe Community College, Keuka College, are accredited by the Middle States group. In the South, it's the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. So there is that accreditation that we're required to have essentially in order to enroll students and to provide financial aid to them. But then individual programs would sometimes have individual accreditation. So for example, a nursing program needs to be accredited. And those are different standards. And they vary by program, so what's there for nursing isn't the same thing for engineering technology. But a lot of it has to do with the relevancy of the curriculum. So for example, in most of these programs, you're talking about academic experiences that require a lot of equipment. So is your equipment kept up to date? Are your students in information technology learning the latest networking skills? Are they using the latest equipment? So there's standards related to that. There are also standards related to the number of students to faculty. So if you have too many students to an individual faculty member, you're not getting that quality experience. That impacts accreditation. There are also requirements that have to do with actually the student's ability to access information in library systems. Is that current? So there are whole strains of accreditation, and it's an external body that comes in. I know, for example, one of the reasons that the Bahamas has worked with Daytona State, why Chile has worked with LaGuardia Community College, is that those countries want their community college systems to be accredited by United States accrediting bodies, because it's sort of like that. In the United States, we call it the good housekeeping stamp of approval. It says that you've met the requirements you should. Students who go through your programs will meet the standards that they should upon exit. So there are those opportunities to partner with U.S. institutions to then achieve those sorts of accreditations. Other questions?
Very good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Just a simple question. I'm Salih from Malaysia. We have this term of community college. We wonder, can you differentiate between community college, technical school, polytechnic, vocational school, maybe in terms of entry points, qualification, funding, career path, or something like that? Because we back there, we only offered for, I think the aim is more on social stability. Because more students are coming in who doesn't have the opportunity to pursue in either polytechnic or higher college. So they are something like a second tier group of students. Maybe you can differentiate between the lines between all the college that we need. Because here we have some college, college. So it's quite difficult to differentiate between US and So thank you.
Sure. The question was, what's the difference between U.S. community college and international technical colleges or polytechnics? And I think what's interesting is if you were to do a sort of a continuum, so let me just kind of draw this out. And when U.S. community colleges started back in the early 1900s in the United States, there were really two different kinds of institutions. There was the junior college, which was really the first 2 years of higher education. And I could go through a lengthy history, which would keep everyone even more from their lunch. But safe to say that there was a belief in American research universities that they could not engage in their true research enterprise if they were forced to teach freshmen and sophomores. They did not want to teach college composition. They did not want to teach calculus. They wanted to teach courses within a major and then do research. And so around that time, you started to see these junior colleges, which offered the first 2 years, and then students would begin there and then move on. At the same time, you had what was sort of the outgrowth of vocational education. And there was a thought that even at that time, that students couldn't just walk onto a factory floor anymore. They couldn't just walk onto a farm, that things had started to get too complex. They needed some level of education in order to do that. So you had these two different kind of threads of community colleges, but at a certain point along that timeline, they came together in what are called comprehensive community colleges in the United States, where students, no matter if they're studying agriculture or if they're studying English literature, are being given some hands-on learning, but they're also being given the necessary courses to then transfer to a university. So, for example, if you're at Monroe Community College and you study automotive technology, your degree includes enough of what we call general education in the United States. So English classes, humanities classes, math, science classes, that you could transfer onto Rochester Institute Technology at the end of your degree. And I think that's what distinguishes U.S. community colleges from many of the polytechnic or technical colleges that you see around the globe. And that's one of the issues, honestly, that countries are starting to see, is that what was designed at one point in time as that second tier, maybe even third or fourth tier of higher education, right now has become almost pointless because it isn't giving students the skill sets that they need to actually compete in the global marketplace. And it becomes an international competitiveness issue. And that's something that the United States is looking at right now. The US is having ongoing discussions about how few of our students are actually completing their college education. And that's becoming a competitiveness issue in this country. It's becoming, if you talk to some of the folks in DC, a national security issue. So when you look around the globe and you see countries that are booming, they're looking to see what's happening with their workforce. I'll give you a completely, non-Asian example. I was at the last meeting of the Council on Foreign Relations, and it happened right after Arab Spring, right after all of the uprisings throughout the Middle East, and we had a panel that was talking to us, and one of their focus points, because we were higher education individuals, was that one of the biggest problems in some of the countries that were experiencing these flare-ups was great unemployment. But the issue wasn't that jobs weren't there. The problem was that the folks who were graduating from these technical colleges, or even in some cases from universities, were not qualified for the positions that were open. And that's become a real issue in many countries, that there are graduates from universities or technical colleges, but employers are saying they don't have the skill sets that we need. I think when you talk about the responsiveness, that's one of the things community colleges do on a regular basis, is we actually have industry advisory panels for our curriculum in career track programs. So our faculty sit down with industry professionals to see, okay, how do we need to tweak this? How do we need to change this program? What do we need to add? Rochester has a great optics industry. We have changed our entire optics curriculum to meet the needs of industry so that it can remain competitive. So I think that's the real issue, is how do you get a workforce that truly is workplace ready out of an institution?
I have one more question. I'd like to know that whether there's someone who already get the degree from the college or even get a graduate degree from the college, we apply and study at the community college, such as junior college. And if so, how many percentage of these students who already get the degree and retrain at your community college? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I'm going to have to apologize because I don't know the percentage right off my head, but I can tell you where the students are. And I'll just use myself as an example. My first degree is in finance. My second degree is in English. I love studying English. I have a master's in English. I taught English at a community college, but I can tell you there's not a lot you can do with a bachelor's degree in English. There's no English factories. Typically if you have a degree in English, it's the person who's working behind the counter at Starbucks. And you come out and you look at your degree and you think, oh my goodness, what do I do now? And so we're starting to see at community colleges more and more students who come out with degrees where every degree, this is one of my little catchphrases, every degree in a college is a workforce degree. Nobody goes to college and thinks, you know what I really want to do once I graduate, no matter what my field is to be unemployed, right? Everybody wants a job. So we see more and more students in certain fields coming back to essentially our health career programs and our technology career programs. So at Monroe Community College right now, the average age of a student in our nursing program is 32. These are students who frequently have four-year degrees in other fields, but now have come back because they realize they have a college degree, but now they need a career. And we see also students at our Applied Technology Center, which offers precision manufacturing, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, automotive technology, because students don't finish our automotive technology degree without 2 or 3 job offers. And so if you have a degree in philosophy, which is a great thing, and you have that knowledge you can carry with you for the rest of your life, you also need to pay your bills. And so you come back to school and you think, oh my gosh, now I need to do something. The other thing, I'll be honest, we see a lot of with international students are students who have sometimes masters or are medical doctors in their home countries, but cannot get employment or recognition of those degrees in the United States. And typically they'll come to community college and go through many of our health programs, whether it's radiographic technology or nursing or pharmacy tech, and then find an opportunity to obtain employment within a healthcare setting, and then gradually, essentially go back and re-earn their degrees. Well, thank you so much.